Welcome to Okaloosa Today, local news and information. Connecting the communities of Fort Walton Beach, Destin, and Okaloosa County.
Welcome to Okaloosa Today on Cox. This is your monthly look at the city of Destin, Fort Walton Beach, and Okaloosa County. I'm Doug Rayner, your host for the City of Destin's portion of the show. And to get things started, we have the City of Destin's Code Enforcement Manager, David Baslak, here today, and Ken Galanders, Community Development Director. David, it's been a while since you've been on the show, so welcome. We're glad you're here. And Ken, you're here often, so thank you very much.
Thanks for letting us be here.
We have an interesting show, a good show today, because we're going to talk about quality of life initiatives in the city, and that deals directly with David's department, which is code enforcement, which is under the community development umbrella, and really get into some things that happened last year, filtering into this year, looking at spring break, and there's just a lot of parts in there. You saw this through your department last year, the Code Compliance Action Plan. So give us an overview of what that is, why it's important to the quality of life in Destin.
Well, the City Council, through their initiative and through our City Manager about a year and a half ago, through a series of public workshops, wanted to figure out where are the areas of quality of life for our residents, businesses, and visitors. Where are those areas that are of significant concern, and what can we do to prioritize those through my department and trickle that down into the code enforcement through either some process improvement or through some regulatory changes, some policy direction changes. So we established that, we put that into action, got the council's approval for that initiative, and it's going to be a continual exercise for our city and community to continually provide that input through David's division, through code enforcement, through my department, and any others, and through the city manager's office, that we start working through each one of those priorities. Mm-hmm.
And you said council initiative as well as maybe a community initiative. We hear a lot of the things we'll talk about today were topics that were brought up by the Chamber of Commerce, other public meetings, issues that we see. David, I know you see these things crop up all the time in your department, and I'm sure they play a big role into your everyday work.
They absolutely do. We're constantly getting phone calls pertaining to neighborhood quality of life, how we can improve quality of life for rights.
Yeah, and it's probably one of the most important things we do. You have a thankless job in code enforcement, working through all of our regulations and making sure everything is the way it's supposed to be. It's very difficult, and I think there are just 3 of you now. We're going to have a new code enforcement officer who's going to work into some short-term rental stuff. But we have, in this action plan that you mentioned, Ken, we have a series of items that will be looked at and worked through. And what we'd like to do today is really inform our public of what those items are. So I'll let you start, and David, you can kind of help Ken shape this up and tell us what this action plan does.
Sure. This year, in 2016, we reviewed the action plan, and our number one priority is looking at our short-term rental uses within some of our specific neighborhoods. And what we've done is we established some new regulatory controls looking at reducing those negative or nuisances that those uses kind of have on other short-term rentals, because those visitors don't necessarily want that nuisance occurring. So David, I think you can kind of highlight some of those. I think there's 3 areas where we are concentrating in terms of the short-term rentals.
Yeah, when you have the short-term rentals in these single-family home neighborhoods, we found that there is a problem of excessive parking, because most of these people that come down, they have 6, 7 vehicles, and if there's not adequate parking to support that, then that's a major problem, and affects the adjacent properties as well as the other neighbors too. Also, the garbage, that just about any time that you have a rental property, there's an excessive amount of garbage, and it's you can see it stacked up out there for extended periods of time. And the changes that we've made to the ordinance hopefully help mitigate some of those negative impacts.
I think we're adding an extra day
that
they have to be ready to have their debris removed from the property.
Yeah, with you can either supply a valet garbage service of some type, or use a private contractor, but the garbage will not sit out there for any extended periods of time anymore. Good. We also have noticed an increase in noise issues, and so some of the changes to our code hopefully address some of that too.
Right. And I think a good bit of your process has been working back with a lot of the rental management companies so that they understand they can translate this over to their tenants as well, right?
Right. We've worked significantly over the last several months preparing for the renewal period. These properties have to be registered every year, and up to this point we estimated we had around 600 properties. Through a lot of research, through other departments, and through some research online, we have found that we have approximately 1,500 short-term rentals only within the city of Destin. So that's a load that we're now having to manage and administer, and that's why you mentioned before we are going to be utilizing a new code enforcement officer position that David can utilize to help manage that whole priority, that initiative for us.
Very good. Well, and we're in the renewal period now, I think, is that right? Tell us how that works and when that ends.
It begins around this time, and they have to be registered by March 1st.
By March 1st.
So we have sent out first courtesy notices to remind them of we have a new application based on the new regulations that were put into effect, and we're starting to get a lot of those to start coming in, and the deadline is around March 1st. For that.
This is actually the March show, so I think that once this airs, we'll have passed that deadline. But if anyone needs to see this or has a question, they can call the Community Development Department, 837-4242, ask for Ken or David until he gets his short-term rental code enforcement manager or officer in, that either one of these guys can help you out with that. All right, so what else was in that plan? Short-term rentals is a big deal. Of course, we're a vacation community, right? Some high concentrated areas. I know there are other things involved.
We are, as we have historically looked at, is our mandatory garbage enforcement or compliance. And every property, every residence is required to have garbage service, specifically for the health, safety, and welfare for our community. You want to make sure that that material is removed. And we unfortunately had a high number of delinquent or non-paying properties, and we've worked diligently over the last year. David has an officer working diligently on coming into compliance, and I think we've reduced it pretty significantly.
Yes.
Yeah, David, tell us a little bit about that. I mean, it was a huge number of out of compliance properties. It took your staff a lot of time to go through that. I mean, it's still something you manage daily.
Yes, the administrative aspect of processing all of these was overwhelming at time, and what we've kind of done to help process the large amounts of it is we also initiated a special magistrate over the historic use of the Code Enforcement Board, and we've increased our monthly code meetings to twice a month. So that's enabled us to process more of these. And actually, as we've processed these, people are starting to come into voluntary compliance much easier. So initially it was a huge amount, but it's started going down quite a bit.
Yeah. We've felt through the communication also of what we've been doing, and through actually your department, Doug, Public Information has helped us inform our residents that this needs to be done and what we get to improve. And we've seen a significant reduction in illegal dumping throughout our community, which was an unsightly nuisance and we've seen a measurable reduction in that effect throughout the community based on this effort.
David, you mentioned special magistrate. I think that was part of the compliance action plan, but also touches all of the areas that we're going to talk about. Is that he can? It's a I think a retired judge that we have employed to be the magistrate and hear all of the code cases. And now, instead of having a board decide how this works, he works through the process, and like you said, he's expedited a good bit of this.
Right.
That's a big deal. The next item we have is outdoor storage and parking, which again, the magistrate will see a lot of these outdoor storage type things. Tell us where we're going with that.
Well, one of the specific phrases when we were doing a lot of the public workshops is that we need to do cleaning up Destin. We need to clean up Destin. And what was found is some of the properties just had an overabundance of extra materials, extra vessels, extra boats, extra jet skis that just seem to have a concerning aesthetic to a lot of our partners, and people inquiring about, why is it like this? Is there anything you can do?
Or the neighborhoods in general, neighbors and things like that, right?
That's right. And we, in David's division, didn't have the tool in the toolbox to make that difference. And so through a extensive amount of public input, we wrote some regulations to emphasize the need to have a different aesthetic for residential properties.
Yeah,
Right.
you would have people parking vehicles, boats, trailers, everything in their front yard. Now there's a specific number of trailers and campers, and they have to be in a specific place. So it greatly enhances the aesthetics of the neighborhood.
What is that number? How does that work? I think it's, I've been told, I just never really remember.
Yeah, you can actually have any number of automobile vehicles as long as they're located with an improved portion of your driveway. Like David mentioned, you can't have them every which way in your front yard, and
Right.
so there's a designated area, and then you could have one of each, I believe, of boats, recreational vehicles, in addition to those,
Right.
up to a certain number. So
Up to, yeah, you can have one RV and two trailers of some type, whether it be two boats or two storage
camper
trailer,
or
a camper or
recreational.
whatever. But it has to be on the side yard closest to the driveway, basically.
So we can certainly, if anybody is wondering about those specific standards, please don't hesitate to call us. We'll have it on our website. We're creating a information pamphlet that we're going to take through approval to get that, so we can help communicate these new standards for our residents.
Yeah, and unfortunately, one size does not fit all because we have the different size lots there. You have some people with only 50-foot lots, and that kind of constricts the available parking. So we do the best we can working with the folks.
I know y'all spend a lot of time on that, this item specifically, because we're a boating community.
Right.
Surrounded by water. As you mentioned, some lots just aren't really conducive for a lot of trailers and boats and things of that nature. So it was a balance that you had to strike,
And it
wasn't easy. I know.
Right, and it was a hard exercise for the city council, and we made a few adjustments to the language, and I think we came to a good compromise, and we'll see how it's implemented. And as with anything, we can certainly make improvements on it if there are concerns out there as we continue to implement it.
Right. Well, let's stay on quality of life and cleaning up Destin and council initiatives, and that's derelict vessels that we've seen in our waterways over time, and naturally they're going to collect over time, especially in an area where just a lot of boat traffic. David, your division and you specifically oversee the derelict vessel process through the Fish and Wildlife folks. But lay this out for us, and a lot of people might see a boat that they don't necessarily think looks very nice, but there's a lot more to it than what is derelict, how that works, where that goes.
Right. Yeah, I work with very closely with the members of the FWC, and they are the ones that they are the regulatory authority over derelict vessels. They have to deem a vessel as derelict, and it has to be in substantial disrepair. Unfortunately, ugly does not make it derelict.
Exactly.
But they have to be given. FWC will cite a vessel owner and give them due process. If a vessel is deemed derelict, then they will give them proper time to bring the vessel into compliance. If they do not, then it will have to go through the court system, and then possibly it can be released. If
You know, it's historically can take weeks to months before that, and that is frustrating for a lot of our
6 to 8 months is not out of the norm.
right. And like David mentioned, through Fish and Wildlife Commission, that the state agency is responsible for it, but we have really opened up a great dialogue with them to say, what can we do to try and help you get rid of these? And David has done an excellent job over the last 2 months. We had 7.
7 identified, 6 have been removed, and 1 is pending. And hopefully within the next week or so, that one will be removed too.
That's good. That's something you can really see, because these things were stacked up in Joe's Bayou, out on Noriega Point.
Well, we've also trying to expedite that process. We have made contact with when the vessel owner can be readily identified. We've made direct contact with the vessel owner, and sometimes we can get them just to sign the vessel over to the city, and that expedites the removal process.
Yeah.
So our Public Services Department gets that call and
They go pick it
jump
up.
on it.
And they do an excellent job.
They
by
do.
the way.
They've done a lot of work in the last couple of months just on that issue specifically.
Right.
Yeah, and again, we hope the public understands that there's a process there. It's a legal process. It's another agency that actually manages it.
Right.
So it's not as easy as calling up David over at Code Enforcement saying there's a really ugly boat sitting not far off my dock.
Right.
We need to get it out of here.
Right. We have, it is a statewide issue, and we've actually heard that the state legislature is working on new regulations at the state level to look at this issue, because it's not just a Destin, it's throughout a lot of our coastal communities that
Right.
are frustrated with the
Maybe
the
adding a
process.
little more local control over their waterways and things
That
like
could
that.
very well be. So that's a good sign.
Yeah, basically, Florida statute does restrict somewhat municipalities and counties' ability to regulate, particularly non-liveaboard vessels. So you have to go through the regulatory authority as the FWC to be able to facilitate the removal of these vessels.
Good. Well, I mean, this is really the tip of the iceberg as far as what our code enforcement and community development department is doing to really bring in some positive quality of life changes and management to the city. And the work you've done, your staff, both of you, is just tremendous. We really appreciate that. This is a very visible project and process. We think that what you're doing will be seen by the community and appreciated. Like anything, it's not always easy, especially to get started. But what you guys have done has been very, very good for our community.
Thank
we
you.
appreciate the effort, and thanks for continuing to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Also, thanks for being on the show today. This has been
Yep.
good, very, very
Anytime.
informative. Yeah.
Thanks for asking me.
Well, I'm glad you came. Want to thank you for watching today. If you'd like for any more information about the City of Destin, please call 837-4242. You can visit our website, cityofdestin.com, and our Facebook page. Stay tuned for Joe Sawyer and the City of Fort Walton Beach next.